Yeah, about that. God dang! Hey! God shit! What the hell?
Outside. No weapons on him. Bust the window. Bust the window.
Where's the window punch? Window punch!
Window punch! Window punch! Window punch! People cover. Cover. I got cover.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. So recently in Philadelphia, there is another case of another black man, another brother, running from the police and was shot in the back. Now let's look at what happened that would result in another black man running away from the police being shot in his back.
The gunfire erupted after the officer pulled the dirt bike rider over.
It happened in the 4200 block of Whitaker Avenue in North Philadelphia. Eyewitness News reporter Alexandria Hoff is live at the scene tonight. Alex.
Well, Yuki, Jessica, here is what we have just learned from police, that the deceased male was armed with what appeared to be a semi-automatic weapon and that he pulled that weapon out anyway, even though he was ordered not to. Now, the other part of this story is that a portion of this was caught on surveillance footage, and that has given Police Commissioner Richard Ross reasons to have initial concerns. Cries of distress rang out from the intersection of Whitaker and East Hunting Park Avenue. That is where police say around 6:40 p.m. a man was shot and killed by a Philadelphia police officer. It began with an officer who was transporting witnesses to the Special Victims Unit who pulled over to speak with a dirt bike rider who, according to witnesses, was riding dangerously.
My understanding is he was just coming over to tell the guy just to knock it off and not to drive like that. I don't think he was coming to give him a ticket. I don't think he was coming to try to apprehend him.
Police Commissioner Richard Ross says that the officer noticed the man had a gun tucked in his waistband and ordered the man not to pull it out. Those witnesses in the back of the officer's car said that the man did so anyway.
According to the witness in the back seat, that male pulled away from the officer and pulled that gun. At some point, that officer does discharge at least one time right around that location. It is important to note that inside this business, there's a video of at least part of the encounter. We are looking for other video. Candidly speaking, part of that video does show that this male was running away for at least one of those shots.
Well, Jim and Rahel, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross said last night and repeated again this morning that there are aspects of this officer-involved shooting that alarm him. Most notably, surveillance video from this business just behind me that appears to show the man who was shot running away from police when he was fatally wounded.
Video, you see the man turning the corner and running away from the officer. Then the officer fires, striking him in the back. He later died in the hospital. Take a look at this exclusive surveillance video. You see the man turning the corner and running away from the officer. Then the officer fires, striking him in the back. He later died in the hospital.
Authorities say the officer-involved shooting began when a 15th precinct officer was driving down Whitaker Avenue, transporting witnesses to the Special Victims Unit. The officer says he was alarmed when he noticed a man driving a dirt bike erratically. The dirt bike stalled and the officer decided to pull up next to it. The officer got out and began to frisk the man on the bike. He felt a gun inside the man's waistband and jumped back. The officer drew his weapon and says the man pulled away from him and grabbed for the gun. Surveillance video nearby captures the man running away from the officer when he was fatally wounded by the officer. The man had already dropped the loaded 9mm gun. His family at the scene yesterday outraged and emotional. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross also alarmed.
I'm not really concerned at this time about DA charges or anything like that. That wasn't my concern. My concern is about the fact that it doesn't meet departmental protocol.
And it's important to note that the surveillance video that has surfaced so far only shows one angle when the man turns his corner and he is shot and fatally wounded. It does not show what happened with him and the officer right around here. Authorities today saying they're looking for that surveillance video to be able to tell the full story.
So, first of all, I have no idea why this particular police officer was pulling over this man. He could have radioed it in and said, well, I see a black suspect riding a legal bike down the street. Could someone stop him? But this particular officer who was transporting victims of a crime, why would he even be interacting with David Jones in the first place? That in itself put the victims of a crime in danger. So it doesn't matter what happens after that. We should be holding him accountable for that alone. So while he's transporting his family to the police station, he decides to stop and violate this man, David Jones' Fourth Amendment rights of illegal search and seizure, and finds out that he has a gun on him, which in the state of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, can you have guns on you? Yes, you can. You just have to have a permit. Can you have your guns concealed? Yes, you just have to have a license to carry a permit, concealed weapon. So him having a gun on him at all doesn't justify him being shot. You can't say that. He was well in his Second Amendment right to bear arms. Until you can prove otherwise, innocent until proven guilty. There isn't even a ban on assault weapons in Philadelphia. Now, the cop says this guy was reaching for his gun, and that's why he even started shooting. And the police chief says, the witness says the guy wasn't complying. But if you ask the witness himself, even he will say, well, that shooting was not justified. There was no reason for them to shoot that man. The witness will tell you at the time he was murdered, he didn't have his gun because he dropped it on the ground. The gun was over there where the officer was, and this man was running around the corner. And now you can see in the video, the police officer shot past his police car with the witness or the victims to a crime, which they call witnesses. He shot past them and shot this man in the back. Now, I don't know how many laws or violations that this cop committed all in this one instance, but it doesn't matter. You still will have the same people saying, back the police, back the blue. We support the police 100% no matter what they do, except for when you have incidents like that recent incident that happened with that nurse where she got arrested for not letting the police take blood samples. You don't see that back the blue crowd show up for instances like that. They ain't nowhere to be found. Again, just highlights the hypocrisy that they have. There is an outrage when something happens to a quote-unquote innocent white woman. where, by the way, she wasn't even taken to the police precinct. She wasn't beat up. She wasn't illegally searched. All they did was put her in handcuffs and throw her in the back of the car. But yet, somehow, when these quote-unquote violent thugs, who are just happen to be black men, armed or unarmed, now this police state and this police brutality is justified. And of course you hear so many people say, well, it's a different circumstance. She was a professional. She was at her job. There was no reason for this. You forgot about the man who was a behavioral therapist who was out with an autistic patient and the cop shot him. He was laying face down on the street, spread eagle, trying to get an autistic person to calm down and lie down with him, who was carrying a toy train or toy truck or whatever he had, and he was shot in the leg. Now, in the case of David Jones, no matter how many violations the cop did, no matter how many things wrong the cop did, people will still find ways to justify the murder of another one of our brothers. Because at this point, we should be past surprised that stuff like this is happening. We should be at the point of responding and protecting ourselves and defending ourselves. We should have been past the point of putting tribalisms to the side and being divided over gender or religion or nationality or anything else that we're divided on. Because regardless of what they disagree on, what they do agree on is whiteness at the end of the day. They learn how to put down tribalism and put race above everything. And until we can learn how to do that and protect ourselves, we are all at danger. Our men, our women, and especially our children. And if we can't do that for our children and for the sake of future generations, then we're going to continually be in this cycle. It was our ancestors that came together, despite of what they say about issues that the black community has had and all the stuff that they like to talk about the black community. Our ancestors came together to get us from the point that we were in America to the harshest times of slavery to the times that we are today. And to say that we haven't made progress would be disrespectful to our ancestors. But to say that we have made it and that we're good where we at would also be disrespectful to our ancestors. We have to continue this movement to put our future generations in a position where they control their own resources, they control their own government, they control their own land, where they control their own destiny. We have to put them in a position where they can be protected worldwide, no matter where they decide to live, because they have a way to protect themselves, because they have built a nation who will come and have their back. For all the horrible ideals and talking points that they've instilled in us, the one thing that we should take from them was their ability to put aside whatever tribalism mindset that they do have in order to maintain a white-dominated society. We have to learn how to come together and put aside our tribalisms to build a nation that would protect us and to help us thrive.
Tonight we talked to a witness who saw the whole thing happen. He was just feet away from the gunfire. Good evening, I'm Erin Coleman.
And I'm Keith Jones. Since NBC 10 showed you that video, questions, protests, and concerns about policing from the stop to the shooting.
We were the only television station to sit down with that eyewitness. I talked to him and asked him, was the officer justified? His answer, no.
I feel unsafe for my family.
Terrence didn't want to reveal his last name, but he did want to tell what he saw the day David Jones was shot in the back and killed by a Philadelphia police officer. Terrence was in the back seat of this SUV with his 2 children, June 8th, on their way to speak with detectives about his son's abduction. Officer Ryan Poundhall was driving them. Terrence says they saw David Jones riding a dirt bike in Hunting Park. The bikes are illegal in the city of Philadelphia.
Pulled up Skirt. I'm taking it. That's what he's saying. So Mr. Jones still sitting on the bike.
Terrence says the officer tried to pat down Jones. There was a struggle. Jones broke free and ran. He says the officer first tried to tase him, then he shot 3 times.
I could hear him. He had an effing gun. I said, the gun right here.
Terrence says the whole ordeal was traumatic. Did you feel that your life was in danger?
Absolutely it was. Absolutely, no question.
Not only for him, but for his 11-year-old daughter and 9-year-old son, who saw the whole thing too.
My daughter was sitting there in a police SUV, like this.
They haven't even mentioned my dear brother. Community activists like Chris Norris say Jones should have never been stopped in the first place, especially with the family in the SUV.
Well, I think that the officer didn't act reasonable, that the officer exhibited bad judgment, that the officer didn't have probable cause to stop Mr. Jones.
For Terrence, he says he's speaking out because he wants the whole story out there, as he tries to explain what happened to his kids.
Daddy, did they have to kill that man? What am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to do?
I spoke with Police Commissioner Richard Ross this afternoon. He told me the investigation continues, and he is taking this matter very seriously.
Backing the blue, members of the community gathered at Philadelphia's Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 5 tonight to show their support for law enforcement. Eyewitness News reporter David Spahn is live outside police headquarters with a look at the events that led to tonight's rally. David.
Jessica, huge turnout tonight in Northeast Philadelphia. Sure, the mission was to support police officers here, really, and across the world, but it was also to protest a controversial policy put forth by Mayor Kenney's administration. About 1,000 people packed the FOP Lodge 5 headquarters Thursday night to back the blue and thank police officers for their work.
So our police officers risk their lives for us every day, and without them, we would have lawlessness.
Diane Thompson joined the crowd to not only support law enforcement members, but to protest a decision made by the Jim Kenney administration to release the names of police officers involved in on-duty shootings. The administration does so in the name of transparency. Last week, protesters showed up at the home of a police officer after the name was made public.
When you go to work each day, you shouldn't have to worry that a pack of rabid animals will suddenly show up at your home and openly threaten your family, as we saw last week.
That was a sham last week. It was a stain on the city of Philadelphia, and it should never happen again.
The goal of this crowd is to protect those names. Something is even being done to get lawmakers in Harrisburg on board.
This is what we need in this community, and to show support, all the people who's come out here tonight, show support for police officers, so all lives matter.
People in the crowd agree to hold off on releasing names, and they agree to support all law enforcement officers in Philadelphia and around the world.
Support our police! Right here! Thank you for what you do.
4 protesters showed up tonight. They were there for just a few minutes and then they left the premises.
John McNesby, the president of Philadelphia Police Union, called Black Lives Matter protesters, quote, a pack of rabid animals and a racist hate group determined to instigate violence. He made these remarks at a Back the Blue rally held on Thursday night to support the police force in response to a Black Lives Matter protest outside the house of Ryan Pownall, the police officer who shot and killed David Jones at a traffic stop this past June. Back in June, Pownall stopped Jones, who was driving a dirt bike, for reckless driving. According to the police report, Pownall felt a handgun in Jones's waistband as he pat him down. After a struggle, Jones allegedly grabbed his gun and Pownall fired, but it jammed. This is when Jones began running away and Pownall fatally shot him in the back. This is the second black man Pownall has shot in the back. Pownall shot Carnell Williams Carney, who is now 36 years old and has been in a wheelchair ever since 2010. The rally was held at the Fraternal Order of Police headquarters, of which McNesby is president. McNesby was quoted as saying, "When you go to work each day, you shouldn't have to worry that a pack of rabid animals will suddenly show up at your home and openly threaten your family. These are not activists. They are racist hate groups determined to instigate violence." In what should come as a surprise to nobody, last year McNesby defended a police officer who appeared to have a large Nazi tattoo on his forearm. When photos of Officer Ian Hans Lichterman popped up on Twitter with what many believed were symbols from Hitler's Nazi party, Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney called the tattoo incredibly offensive. McNesby, on the other hand, said, "It's an eagle, not a big deal." Not a big deal at all. McNesby, who looks like he's about to give you a side quest that you've been avoiding the entire time, followed that it's just an eagle tattoo statement by saying that burning crosses were just really excited lowercase t's, and that the KKK members wore hoods to keep from spilling soup on their shirts. Asa Khalif, a Black Lives Matter activist in Philadelphia, said neither he nor fellow protesters were deterred by McNesby's words. "We will not let words stop us. The only words we're using is justice for David Jones, and we will not be sidetracked by the bullying tactics of the Fraternal Order of Police."
More fallout in North Miami from last year's police shooting of a behavioral therapist. The police chief, who's being forced out of his job, is now planning to sue the city. CBS 4's Aurelio Ortega has more from North Miami.
Hiring the wrong people. Some heated moments during a community forum as the city of North Miami addresses the pending termination of North Miami Police Commander Emil Holland and Chief Gary Eugene.
Sworn statements given by Chief Gary Eugene directly contradicted the sworn statement given to the FDLE.
The chief was placed on paid administrative leave Thursday. The city plans to terminate his employment July 7th. Commander Emil Holland was also told of the city's intent to fire him. The city says its decision stems from an internal affairs investigation into a high-profile shooting involving unarmed mental health therapist Charles Kinsey last July. He was shot in the leg by Officer Jonathan Aleda, who was charged with attempted manslaughter in April. He remains on paid administrative leave. Most of those in attendance disagreed with the city's decision to terminate Chief Eugene and Commander Holland, but some commended the city for the way it handled the investigation.
I certainly appreciate the effort each and every one of you all have been taking to make sure this is transparent.
Firing the commander and firing the chief is not the solution. You guys are commending these guys for making so much change, but it's fake change.
In a phone interview, Chief Eugene told us he was shocked to find out when he came back from his 5.5-week medical leave of the city's intent to terminate him.
They are looking for any reason to stop me of completing that investigation because I was still the chief as last Wednesday.
The chief says he plans to sue, claiming discrimination because the two people losing their jobs following the investigation are Haitian American.
We're a very diverse city. For anyone to claim that they're being discriminated because they're Haitian American, for me as a Haitian American, I kind of find that offensive.
I don't know if people totally get the scale of how unprecedented this, at this point, obvious blackballing is. In NFL history, there have been 144 seasons where a quarterback who was 29 years old threw at least 200 passes. 144 times that's happened. 142 times that quarterback's been on a roster the next year. The two that were not, Bobby Hebert, who held out for a contract and was in the league the following year, and Colin Kaepernick. So another way to say it, there are 140 plus guys have had a season, good, bad, amazing, awful, just where they played enough to throw 200 passes. Every single one of them that wanted to be in the league the next year was in the league the next year. Some of those guys got hurt. Some of those guys got benched. Some of those guys were awful. Some of those guys won Super Bowls. Every single one of them had a job the following season. So you don't even have to look at the fact that Colin Kaepernick, according to Football Outsiders, was the #1 red zone passer in football last year. You don't even have to look at the fact that Scott Tolzien is getting to start, that Blake Bortles is getting to start. Just his age and the fact that he was on the field for every other player in history got them a job the following year.
The only reason that I know that Colin Kaepernick wants to play football is because when he was invited to work out with Seattle, he went. Didn't work out, didn't make the team. I haven't heard from him since. I've done a number of hours of research just looking for something from him. I wanted to just hear something. Hey, I want to play football. I'm practicing. I should be out there. And not that he has to do it to get on a team, but I think it would be nice, and it goes a long way. We use the word blackballing. I think he needs to open his mouth and say something, whether it's for his social cause or for his job.
Have you heard Johnny Manziel talk this offseason?
Listen, I've heard Johnny Manziel at least speak. We know who Johnny Manziel is. We know what kind of person he is. We know what he wants to do. We know where he wants to party. We know all of that. I've also heard him say many times, I apologize. It's time to start over. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to turn over a new leaf.
So
I know all those things because I've read those things.
So what should Cap say?
How about...
Should he say, I'm sorry?
I don't think he needs to apologize. I think he needs to tell people what he wants.
Because the video that we showed, there were 2 other players kneeling next to Cap. You know where those guys are at? You know where they're going to be out on Sunday? They're going to be on the field playing ball like the rest of the players. You know what else is going to be happening week number 1? There's going to be more protests around the league. And you know what these guys are going to be doing? They're going to be playing ball. What are the owners going to do? They're going to turn a blind eye to the guys that are protesting now and continue to punish Cap.
Because those guys did it once they had permission. That's the key part of this.
He did it first.
He did it first. Those other guys did it once the team and the league said, we might not love you doing it, but you're allowed to do it. All I want is for people to be able to have an honest discussion about the football part of this. Now, I have very extreme opinions about the social part of this. And if you would like to contact me on Twitter, or if you would like to see me on the streets of New York, one moment, we can get into why I would march with Colin Kaepernick. But from a purely football perspective, this is an abomination. This is an embarrassment. And in the sport, more than any other sport, where the teams preach, sacrifice your health, sacrifice your family, sacrifice your long-term well-being for the betterment of the team. The fact that there is not the Jets who are trotting out Josh McCown, not the Rams who are trotting out Jared Goff, not the Niners this year who are trotting out Brian Hoyer, not the Jags who could win their division with a mediocre quarterback who are going to trot out Blake Bortles or Chad Henne. None of those teams want to set aside their politics to put a player on the roster who is better than what they've got. How can you then ask these guys to go out there and play through pain when you are not putting winning first?
Why in the world are they asking Cam Newton, before he's getting ready to play his first regular season game, about Colin Kaepernick? Why? Why are you talking about Colin Kaepernick?
Because he's not on a roster.
Because it's a distraction. Because there's no reason for it other than it's an issue. And if they're talking to Colin Kaepernick and Von Miller and Aaron Rodgers and guys all across the league, imagine what they would be doing in the actual locker room or on an actual team.
We don't have to imagine it. We
know.
Jenna, we know.
Yes,
and his teammates found it such a distraction, they voted him Man of the Year. And his coach found him such a distraction, he advocates for him.
Yeah.
So go.
Listen, there's something that I think that people need to know. I'm sick and tired of people talking about distractions. All right? It's a made-up term. All right? When you're in the NFL locker room, on a given Wednesday, today, the media is allowed in the locker room for 30 minutes. All right? The star players, the media arrange a spot to talk to them. Now, that's not every day. Colin Kaepernick's either going to talk on Wednesday or he's going to talk on Thursday. He's not going to be talking the rest of the week. All right? The players in the locker room